The battle of mid, which team sucks less? Welcome in, everybody. It's Carson Fox for Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports with the Week 9 preview show, previewing our West Virginia Mountaineers who come into this week's contest with a 3-4 overall record, 2-2 conference record, at the Arizona Wildcats, who have identical 3-4 overall record, but a 1-3 conference record. Well, 7 p.m. Eastern time kickoff from Arizona Stadium. Ooh, how original for that, the name of a stadium. Oh, boy. In Tucson, Arizona on FS1. The ESPN betting odds have this game at Arizona being the 2.5-point favorite with an over-under set at 52.5. The ESPN matchup predictor gives West Virginia the better odds in this contest. Hold on one second. Sorry, just taking my dog's collar off there so that she doesn't scratch so much. Anyway, 52.3% in favor of West Virginia. As I like to do with all of my preview videos, the first thing I like to talk about is the matchup history. But we don't have any. This is the first meeting between the two schools, who I cannot believe at 3,000 miles separating Morgantown, West Virginia from Tucson, Arizona, is the fact that these two teams are conference opponents. Not Pitt, not Syracuse, not Rutgers, not Penn State, not Ohio State. No, West Virginia and Arizona are conference members because that's what makes most sense in 2024. I'm sorry, bringing a lot of sarcasm and a lot of shade already to start out this program tonight, and sorry for that, but it's just I can't believe we're here. I cannot believe we're at this point. I don't want to go off on a whole tangent that could be another video, but we're talking about a 3-4 unexciting Arizona team against our beloved Mountaineers, who had all of this hope and prospects not much longer than 8 weeks ago, and here's where we are. So, a little frustrating, but still I want to bring it for you and tell you about this matchup and, kind of break it down, hopefully give you some things that you can take away from this one, that even though, by the time kickoff comes, you just want to watch football. You want to see your Mountaineers play some football for, a 3.5 hour period. And I get you. And I do too. So hopefully that I can give you some things that as you're watching it that, you can start to think about. So what's on the line for both of these teams? Unfortunately now, both of them are on the outside looking in at any potential spot in the Big 12 championship game. Arizona even less so than West Virginia with 3 conference losses. So I would say this is really just treated more so as a game without any looming expectations for either side. Now, both teams, not to say that both teams don't want to win this game. Obviously, that's the objective, and I'm not going to shortchange that. But you get where I'm saying is, both these teams not being where they were thinking they were just 8 weeks ago, with expectations for challenging in this conference, at least in the top tier. Not being so. So the only way to rectify that is by winning from here on out. So it's all treated as a game, kind of playing with house money in a way is what you would call it. Neither of these teams are going to be satisfied with just a bowl game appearance this season, but to even get there, they desperately need to win this game. And I know for as much that we are angry as Mountaineer Nation at head coach Neil Brown and the way that this team has performed this season, Arizona's really been bad these last 5 games. 37-7 home loss against Colorado a week ago. They go on the road and get trashed by BYU, who again is nationally ranked in the top 15, but 41-19. They lose at home to Texas Tech 28-22, but you would think that they could score more than 22 points on that Texas Tech defense. They go and they win on the road at Utah 23-10, and that was kind of when Utah was going crazy with the Cam Rising quarterback situation. Week prior to that, this is when Arizona was still ranked, at Kansas State, 31-7. So kind of in free fall for Arizona, starting it off, having a good start to the season. I was kind of doing a weekly top 25 poll and still having them out in there contending, but not anymore. So talk about the weather. 98 degrees, the high in Tucson on Saturday, and sunny. Could drop by about 20 degrees by game's end. So arguably this will be the hottest last weekend of October game in West Virginia's program history, is what I probably think it would be. Anybody who hasn't ever been to the Southwest or Arizona specifically, I know they call it a dry heat, and I've been there, about close to half a dozen times now. What I will tell you, and it changes around, I've been in there in December, but 98 degrees will feel more so like 88 or less, just because of there's no humidity factor. So it dropping down to 78 is going to feel more in the 60s. So yes, it's hot. It feels like you're checking on cookies in an oven with the way that rolling heat comes off the sand. That's the best way I can describe it to people when I tell them about Arizona. So it's going to feel hot at kickoff for certain. I wouldn't be surprised if a few players go down because of cramping or just needing some water, but at the same time, as the game goes on, it will get cooler and then just absolutely perfect to play in. So injuries. What I have to say before I get into this long list of injuries to talk about with the Mountaineers this is the case in point that just really befuddles me in the year of our Lord 2024 of why there aren't injury reports for FBS football. I mean, with how much money is spent in betting across the nation every single week on college football, how in the world does the NCAA not regulate some sort of injury report? I know they have bigger issues that they can't figure out, but we basically as fans have to rely on whatever the head coach feels as if he wants to tell the media, whether it's true or not, every single week going into the matchup, and that's as best of as accurate of a portrayal as we can get. So if you're not either checking Twitter religiously an hour before kickoff, or you're in the stadium to see whether or not a player is suiting up, that's as much as anybody when it comes to injuries, because the head coach is going to keep that close to the vest. And that is the case this week with head coach Neal Brown and talking about his quarterback situation. Garrett Greene, senior quarterback, did not play in the second half against Kansas State at home a week ago. So we do not know as of the recording of this video, and I decided to do this late Thursday night because I wanted to hear Neal Brown's comments on the show, the regular weekly Neal Brown show from Kegler's, to see if any sort of word would be coming either way, whether it was Garrett Greene or Nico Marchiol, but he's going to play that close to the vest and call it undetermined, undecided. So we don't know. I can only speculate. And when I talk about what to watch for when West Virginia has the ball, I'll give you who I think is going to start. Also, same with left tackle Wyatt Milam, who's had an incredible year so far this season. Mid-season, second-team All-American, according to The Athletic, just a week ago, working his way toward becoming a first- or second-round NFL draft pick, just like Zach Frazier was last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if he can't go in this contest, we're going to get redshirt freshman Johnny Williams at left tackle. Jaheim White's good to go, going to play. That's great. Did exit in the second half against that K-State game, so going to have him a full go, him and C.J. Donaldson. No Aubrey Burks for the second week in a row. That's forced West Virginia to unfortunately have to bring on Kakora Tarnu back onto the field and play meaningful snaps alongside Jaheim Joseph and Anthony Wilson. So don't like that they have to turn to Kakora Tarnu, but injuries are what they are. No Jaden Bray once again, and also Aiden Garnes. It sounds like he isn't going to have a go. Watching the game, from the field level last week against Kansas State, I saw a lot of Dantes Fagan back onto the field. So my question, where is Jacoby Spells? Third-year player, former four-star recruit. Why is he not contributing to this team? So if we get Dantes Fagan on one side, Garnet Hollis Jr. on the other side, oh boy, here we go. So what to watch for when Arizona has the ball? Let's talk about the Wildcats. Over their last 6 games, they're averaging just 17 points per game. That's bad. It gets worse. They have 15 turnovers on the season. Mind you all, We're only 7 games into this. There's 5 more games, and they already have 15 turnovers. That's 122nd, one of the worst in the country in turnovers. And also penalties, 107th. They average 8 per game for 67 yards per game. I remember watching that. I think it was a Friday night kick, that BYU Kansas State game, and they just killed themselves in penalties. I like this quote from an article just this past weekend from quarterback Noah Fifita. I think it's a collaborative effort. A couple of penalties, more turnovers on my part, and then just little details that we got to clean up to be a good offense. You got to be really in tune with all the little things, and you got to play collaboratively. Just one mistake from one guy on a certain play can cost you the whole drive, and that's what it seems like is the mantra for Arizona this entire 2024 season. So those who want to argue the negative impact of head coach Jedd Fisch leaving Arizona for Washington this past offseason, that definitely have some credence based upon the way Noah Fifita's played this season. But also, Arizona, I feel like, has really struggled to develop a second wide receiver. Coming into the preseason, reading some of the preseason mags, you would have thought that it was Montana Lemonious Craig. Amazing name. Love the name, at least. But 17 catches for 172 yards and 1 touchdown. It sounds like a stat line of like Stedman Bailey any given Saturday back in the Big East. So no other receiver averages more than 35 yards per game for this Arizona Wildcats team. So not moving the ball through the air, at least anyone else other known as Tetairoa McMillan. So the second leading receiver is running back Quali Conley with 25 receptions for the season. So let's talk about him. Redshirt sophomore quarterback, number 11, Noah Fifita, a guy you're going to have to watch for 4 quarters. He was the Pac-12 Freshman Offensive Player of the Year in 2023 when he passed for nearly 2,900 yards in just 9 starts with 25 touchdowns and 6 picks. Only 6. Led Arizona to a 10-win season that ended in an Alamo Bowl victory over Oklahoma, who beat West Virginia by 3 scores. But the numbers this year on Noah Fifita, bad, really bad. 152 for 257. That's a 59% completion percentage, but 10 interceptions. We've thought that Kansas's Jalen Daniels has had a bad year. Fifita has 2 more interceptions than Jalen Daniels does on the season. Ooh. But 1774 passing yards with 9 touchdowns. So that still equates to Fifita having 253 yards per game through the air. It's just that Arizona isn't putting up points. This is a statistical anomaly that I found whenever I was doing the research for this show, that Arizona, as an offense this year, averages 389 yards per game of total offense. But they only have 16 red zone trips. Meanwhile, West Virginia has many more than that. So they're moving the ball. They're not getting to the end zone. They're not putting up points. So, I think they're getting it, and then they're getting penalized, and then they get more yards. So it's like stop, go, come back, red light, green light kind of thing with this Arizona offense. So Fifita can still do it. He can still move the ball through the air. But I think because of how many plays that Arizona has to run to get even to the points that they are scoring, he's turnover prone. And he doesn't have Jedd Fisch this year calling plays for him. And they haven't been able to step up in some other areas offensively. But they have one of, are arguably and I've been talking about him for weeks, I feel like, best wide receiver in college football, number 4 junior wide receiver, Tetairoa McMillan, at 6'5", 212. He is the perfect size. He can do it all. 2023 All-American, 2024 preseason, All Big 12 on the season, 47 receptions, 780 yards, just 4 touchdowns, and all 4 of those touchdowns came in Arizona's Week 1 contest against an FCS opponent. But he is the Big 12's leading receiver at 111 yards per game. Breaking it down across Arizona's 7 games, very interesting. In 3 games, New Mexico, K-State, Texas Tech, he's combined for 29 catches for 603 yards, and those 4 touchdowns, like I said, all came against New Mexico. Other 4 games, Northern Arizona, Utah, BYU, Colorado, just 18 catches for 177 yards. So has all the physical tools and capabilities to, and he's the best wide receiver in college football by my money. Already being projected in this year's 2025 NFL draft as being a top 12 draft pick in the first round. So if I'm West Virginia, I'm doubling him. I'm tripling him. I'm pulling a Dan Lanning and pulling guys off the field or onto the field at the very last second before the snap count to just get an extra man on the field just to guard number 4. Like, I have been worried about this matchup against McMillan since the Pitt game. I have no idea how West Virginia's secondary is going to guard him. Whew, how do you feel? Leave your comments about that sticky matchup here on YouTube. Love to know from you. And why I'm so worried, finding this stat, saw on Twitter earlier this week, Huddy Tuddy once again coming through on Twitter with some awesome stats. West Virginia second worst, just in front of Purdue, who's terrible among Power 4 teams in pass defense efficiency. You may ask yourself, what the heck is pass defense efficiency, Carson? Well, it takes the number of passes completed versus the number of passes attempted, considering yards and touchdowns allowed. So second worst in the Power 4. That's West Virginia's secondary. And what I have to ask is, what the heck is West Virginia going to do to force turnovers? We were, battling, it seems like, fans against Neal Brown and media last week, but nobody wanted to ask Neal Brown during this press conference on Monday, what is West Virginia going to do to force turnovers against a offense that's one of the leaders in the country in turnovers, caused, but you're not going to ask that as those West Virginia defense. So, second straight game in which it failed to create a turnover last week against K-State. It's obviously, take away the Penn State game when Drew Aller fumbled allegedly because of Aubrey Burks clapping for the snap. WVU has not won a turnoverless game this season. So, incredibly, vitally important, especially going against Ted-Heroic McMillan. Now, talking about their running back, number 7, senior Quali Conley. He's a transfer from San Jose State, where head coach Brent Brennan was a year ago. 93 carries for 500 yards. That's a 5.4 yards per carry average, which is pretty decent, with 6 touchdowns on the season. Second on the team, as I mentioned already, with 25 receptions. The ball, if it is going onto the ground, it's going to go through him. So watch out for number 4. Watch out for number 7. Though, and I, to some respects, versus how much, I do not care for Jordan Leslie at this point as defensive coordinator, and, also Shadon Brown on the staff. But I will say, even though, like him saying that was the best defensive effort earlier this week on his press conference, saying that was the best defensive effort that he's seen from the Mountaineers this season, I know that's taken out of context in respects to like the one stretch, but you can't look at it like that. It's a 4 quarters game, y'all. It's a 4 quarters game, and at the end of it, West Virginia still allowed, 38 points? I know it was a 45-16 game, but Garrett Green throws the pick 6, so you still give up that many points. But their rush defense, 128 yards per game allowed. That's up to 50th in the nation. I think Josiah Trotter is now the team leader in tackles. That's awesome to see how much that he's contributing. At least the effort was there on the rush defense last week to stop DJ Giddens, to stop Dylan Edwards, and don't let Johnson beat you. But here's the problem. It's the complete opposite now for Arizona. They can beat teams through the air. Will it be a get-right game for any of their other second, third, fourth string receivers? Maybe. But it's all going to come down to McMillan. And I also do have an all Big 12 member on their offensive line, 6'5", 330, senior left tackle, Jonah, I'm going to butcher this last name, Savena. Must be Samoan or Hawaiian, so messing that one up. But that's what you need to look for on the Arizona offense in this game. When West Virginia has the ball, I think it's going to be Nico Marchiol, who's the starting quarterback. I can't imagine that Garrett Green had a full week of practice. There might be a concussion protocol. I could be wrong, so I'm speculating. That's what I hate to do, is when I don't have the answers for you, to give you this information and go on these long tangents and then something be switched. Like I can think of last year talking about Keaton Slovis, and then at the very last minute getting replaced after I had recorded my video, and Jake Retzlaff got the start. So, but my guess, and we don't know whether it'll be Garrett Greene or Nico Marchiol, but I think it's going to be Nico Marchiol. Getting a full week of practice to go for this one. On the season, just 10 of 18 for 80 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, does have an interception, but also 20 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown. I think this is impossible to compare this start to last year's matchup when he started against Texas Tech because of the weather situation. He can't compare the outer bands of a hurricane in Morgantown in September versus 98 in Tucson. And he is playing in the state of where he played high school football at Hamilton High. So I think this will be an interesting matchup for Nico. I think the 3 things that he needs to do if he starts this contest: make the right reads. I know that's easier said than done, but what I saw out of him in that Oklahoma State series when he got onto the field, great read. Wide receivers need to help Nico Marchiol out in creating separation, and they've struggled to do that at times this season with Garrett Greene as quarterback. And also the short yardage runs by Nico Marchiol are going to be different. The downside, if you want to call it that, between Nico Marchiol not being the same rushing threat out of the spread read option run game as Garrett Greene is that he's not as fast. He's more of a, as Neil Brown has said, a power back runner rather than a speed runner that Garrett Greene is. So Greene can take off for 40, 60. We've seen him do that in the past. But Nico Marchiol in short yardage situations, similarly how Rocco Becht was so effective, or even to a certain extent Drew Aller from Penn State, when those just bigger body guys are moving. You saw how he laid the lumber in the Oklahoma State game. That's what he can do for you. But how does that then affect C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White in the rushing game, which at this point in time they're not doing better, at least statistically, than they were a season ago. In 2023, on pace to fall short of their rushing averages from a year ago. Does West Virginia present better than they did in 2019 through 2021 when it was Jarret Doege running the offense, handing the ball off to Leddie Brown? I mean, Jarret Doege was a statue back there. You never thought he was going to run the ball, and defenses knew that. So I do think running out of the spread read option, that defenses, Jacob Manu, the linebacker, standout player, is going to want to key on the running back as opposed to the quarterback. So there might be some prime opportune reads for Nico Marchiol to capitalize on if the linebackers jump on Jaheim White, C.J. Donaldson, and he can take off with it. But is he as fast as Garrett Greene? Is he going to get chased down? Yes. So what I would love to see, before I kind of break down a little bit more into Arizona, I would love to see C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White be used out of 2 H-back sets alongside Nico Marchiol, and each get involved more in the passing game if the other is witnessing success running the ball. So, I watched back some, especially the interception that was returned for a touchdown last week against Kansas State, and Garrett Greene had a wide open CJ. I wouldn't say wide open, but streaking across the field. The primary read probably was Hudson Clement there that he threw the interception intended for. But right across the field was a streaking C.J. Donaldson that I just don't ever think he ever looked his way. More of the check down game. If the wide receivers for West Virginia, as I feel like they have this season, are struggling to create separation downfield, why not use one of these 2 backs in that check down game? Let them beat defenders one-on-one. C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White. I think Marchiol will have more success here in this game if they try to do that. Because, unfortunately at Garrett Greene's size, 5'10", 5'11", however tall he is, I still think struggles to see over the offensive line. So he has the proclivity to stay within the pocket whenever it's, not a designed run instead of taking off. And I think that Marchiol can use the short yardage passing game as an extension of the run, especially if Wyatt Milam can't go Saturday night. And maybe that might open up some shot plays downfield that also West Virginia has really struggled to capitalize on this season. So we saw how I think it was definitely the Oklahoma State game, but even last week against Kansas State on the touchdown to Hudson Clement, using the middle of the field on streaks, on in routes, on digs out of the slot. That West Virginia, I'm saying these checkdowns to the back, that West Virginia can do more of that this week against Arizona, and I feel like have some more success in the passing game than what they have been doing. I just think that opposing defenses had a full off season's worth of scouting to really evaluate Garrett Greene. What does West Virginia like to do with him in his offense? They've seen that, play action, out route to the sideline enough times with Devin Carter from a year ago. That's the interception play last week against Kansas State. So they've seen a lot. They've seen a lot on film, and I think that's why Greene has the interceptions totals that he does. So it's time for Nico Marchiol in this contest. So about the Arizona defense, the scheme is a 4-2-5. They're allowing 28 points per game, and I think that's a very pivotal number. I'll get back to that. Also, 364 yards per game in total offense. Now, I don't think that those numbers are an accurate portrayal. I don't think the West Virginia or the Arizona defense is the beneficiary of an offense that has supported it. So those defensive statistics, I'm a little bit skeptical on. And the reason why is I already mentioned Jacob Manu, preseason all Big 12 linebacker, leads Arizona in tackles with 47, having arguably as good of a season as Josiah Trotter, so to at least compare apples to apples with what West Virginia has. But also Tacario Davis, preseason all Big 12, love his size and range, 6'4", 190 pounds, pro prospect. I know he doesn't have the interception totals on the season, and it only has 25 tackles and a tackles for loss, but I think the teams are just staying away from him. They don't throw number one's way, try and beat Arizona in other places, and they're having success with that. So he might shut down one wide receiver in this game, whoever he chooses, to match up man versus man, whether that be Hudson Clement, whether that's Traylon Ray, whomever. That's what Arizona's going to have to scheme for in this game of how they use Tacario Davis. Special teams game, not much to say, not much to report. I do like Arizona's punter, a true freshman, Michael Salgado Medina. 16 punts on the season, 43-yard average, has a long of 57, just like Ollie Straw. 1 of 50 yards plus, 7 inside the 20. Thing with Ollie Straw from last week, 2 more inside the 20. Also, matched his... not inside the 20, matched his season-long punt. I knew he was going to get one off if they had the length of the field, so matched that long of 57 yards last week against K-State, get a good job punting. Also, we have some new guys involved in the kick return game. Last week, Preston Fox had 3 returns, 1 for 30 yards. Jalen Anderson had 1 for 25 yards, and also Day Farmer, true freshman, getting involved, 1 for 21 yards. So not seeing Traylon Ray as much back there returning kicks. Not much to say more about Preston Fox doing the punt returning duty and Rodney Gallagher for this week. Arizona really struggles in the return game. In the kickoff returns, the guy who does it is Jeremiah Patterson, 16 returns for just a 22-yard average so far this season, no touchdowns. 3 guys, Patterson included, Jack Luttrell and Rex Haynes, have combined for just 83 yards on 13 returns this year for Arizona in the punt return game. Now, they do have a preseason all Big 12 senior kicker, Tyler Loop. 14 for 18 from field goals this year, long of 54, perfect 15 for 15 on PATs. Now, he did miss a 52-yarder in the second quarter last week against Colorado. So, something to take note of. Redshirt senior kicker Michael Hayes made a 44-yarder last week against K-State. So, Loop versus Hayes in the kicking battle. So, my 3 keys to victory for you, and then I'll get you out on this. Number one, first and foremost, if you can't already tell from now a 30-minute video, I am terrified of Tetairoa McMillan. This is like West Virginia going against Calvin Johnson back in the 2006 Orange Bowl. I don't know if he's Calvin Johnson good, at least in the pro sense, but oh boy, Fifita is going to go to him early, often. And, I don't have the stat line research for this show, but I've heard, this was kind of before I was born or very young, when West Virginia played Marshall, when Marshall had Randy Moss. If Marshall would have thrown to Randy Moss every single play, they would have won the ball game. I don't remember what year that was, but that's kind of how I feel about this matchup with Tetairoa and McMillan. I feel like West Virginia can throw everything in the kitchen sink at him, and he's still going to find ways to catch the balls. So just stop the big plays. If you have to go the whole Pat Miller route against Terrence Williams in 2012 of Baylor, and you have to play 10 yards off the ball and just let him check you on like 8 or 9 yard curl route receptions that you just shove him out of bounds the whole game, like, okay, then just don't let them score whenever they get into the red zone. Like, I know I'm probably being a little bit facetious there, but I'm just telling you, he's going to be a problem. He's going to be a problem, so stop the big plays. Whenever West Virginia, it seems like these last few weeks, allows some sort of easy point, streak down the field, easy touchdown, their chances to win precipitously drop, and their chances of losing by double digits, or at least by 2 touchdowns, as people like to say on Twitter, vastly increases. So stop McMillan. Number 2, staying along the lines with Nico Marchiol, is that Nico Marchiol now has to become Neal Brown's Brandon Silvers. If it becomes starting this game, it's the last 5 seasons, and if somehow, some way West Virginia gets to a bowl game, like if this is now time, like a Wally Pipp situation, Nico Marchiol's now is the quarterback. Like, the career of Brandon Silvers at Troy, I feel like was chronicled a lot in 2019, and then poof, we never heard about it again. But what he did with Neal Brown, did with Brandon Silvers at Troy: 10,684 passing yards with 71 passing touchdowns, 415 rushing yards with 16 rushing touchdowns. Very similar size between the two quarterbacks at about 6'2", 6'3", 220. I think this could really be the final Hail Mary, proverbially, for Neal Brown to keep his job. Whether that's already being decided in backdoor closed rooms, Nick Saban, Anthony Beck, Jimbo Fisher, I don't know. Like, I'm going to let the reporters do their job. Mike Azaza does an amazing job on that, of talking to the right people, digging and finding out where things happen with that. But I feel like for any semblance of Neal Brown to keep his job, West Virginia has to win the final 5 games of this season, win a bowl game with a quarterback that's coming back next year, so that he can say, hey, West Virginia won 9 games once again. We got to a bowl game. You have wins over 3 teams that were either ranked preseason or early on, or were ranked at some point in the season, or were ranked. No, they weren't ranked whenever they beat them. Can't say that, but Kansas, Oklahoma State, now Arizona. I think all 3 of those teams were picked higher in the preseason poll than West Virginia was. So to win those 3 games, even though West Virginia did not win the backyard brawl, looked terrible against Penn State at home, looked terrible against Iowa. Well, to a certain extent with Iowa State, terrible against Kansas State. So not being another ranked opponent, like it's like the Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season argument. That under Neal Brown you can win 9 games, only the 20th time in program history, but you can't ever beat ranked opponents. So you got to keep them. Do you want to spend the money? Do you not want to spend the money? That's what I'm talking about. Like, there's not much more. Like, I know that Neal Brown wants to do right by Garrett Greene, that he wants him to have a senior send off. He wants him to kind of even if it's on the road against what may be at that point in time a ranked Texas Tech team, even though that might be unlikely. I don't think much of Baylor. I don't think much of UCF. Even Cincinnati this week, going to play a tough game on the road at Colorado. I think that's the last time that they flirt with the national rankings. And I also think West Virginia can beat that Cincinnati team. Nippert, they've had some success at Nippert, especially during those Big East days, going to have an extra week to prepare because of a bye week. But you get where I'm going with this. West Virginia, or Neal Brown, wants to do right by Garrett Greene to end his career at West Virginia, so wants to give him all the opportunities. But at the same time, I think that might be something that not an omen, but decision being made that shows one direction or another for this end of the season is the job security of Neal Brown. If he plays Nico Marchiol, wins these games, like that's his play here to keep his job. Now, you want to play the player who has the best chance to, best opportunity to give you the chance to win. You want whoever that the guys choose in the locker room. A lot can be said by that. But like here, this is, if it's not like a full week of practice, full week of starting reps in practice for Nico Marchiol, like this is his chance. This is his opportunity to go and grab it and change the narrative, at least like from here on out, for West Virginia football. So go do it. Be your Brandon Silvers and go out there and be as good as you possibly can be, Nico Marchiol. And I'll be rooting for him. Also, my last thing was my 3 keys to victory is just let Arizona implode. That's exactly what Kansas State did against West Virginia a week ago, so do it back to Arizona. I've already given you the numbers about turnovers, about penalties. I mean, frickin' Brennan called an onside kick on the opening kick last week against Colorado. Like, stupid coaching decisions, stupid decision making, like, Arizona is just as much in flux, if not more, than West Virginia. So you've already proved that you can win on the road by demolishing Oklahoma State. I thought it was a weird quip from Neal Brown talking this week about, maybe it'll be good. Again, it wasn't direct words, but maybe it'll be good to get away from home. And I'm just wondering myself, okay, maybe that West Virginia just tenses up playing, and this is a strange foreign concept to me, but maybe just West Virginia plays too tense, gets wrapped too tight, puts way too much pressure on themselves whenever they're at Milan Puskar Stadium. They know where the the palpable energy of Milan Puskar Stadium during a home game, especially as it's directed at the head coach and other assistant coaches, not so much as at the players, but you know what I mean. It has a ripple effect. It makes its way down, and maybe just getting away, as I talked on the onset, just going and playing a game as if it's really just like a backyard football pickup game against Arizona, 3,000 miles away from home, where they might not feel the same kind of pressure that they do in the state of West Virginia to try and win a ball game. It's weird, but I can see that. I can see that potential argument, or I'm kind of reading between the lines. I think that's where this game will be able to tell that true. Whether Oklahoma State was just a really, really bad team that West Virginia caught at the absolute perfect time, or they do still believe in that locker room. They still, are able to rinse off the Kansas State, rinse off the Iowa State games. They're, relatively in some respects healthy. I know some injuries have piled up, but they just want to go out there and play ball. Next man steps up, next opportunity. I want to go out there and prove myself. There's a lot of still, I feel like, players on this team who want to prove something for this program. Especially some of the younger guys who might get some opportunities here in this back third of the season. So maybe that's it. Maybe just go out there, play football, play fast, play smart, and just let it rip. And then if Arizona is able to cave in on itself, to take advantage. I'm thinking especially in the turnover department. So prediction, I said during the preseason, 38-35 West Virginia. Thought that they could win this game on the road. Didn't think they would win last week against K-State. Did think they were going to beat Iowa State. Didn't think they were going to beat Oklahoma State. So I'm worse this year than I was last year on my picks. 4-3 on the season. Now I do still think West Virginia is going to win this game, but I think it's going to be lower scoring. Given the factor of Nico Marchiol getting into the game, given Arizona's offense just being in a mess and a wreck, I'm going to say 28-20. I think that 28 number is important. I think whichever team, given the offensive struggles of Arizona and also West Virginia just recently with a backup quarterback starting, I think the first team in 28 wins, and I think West Virginia is going to get there. And I think they are going to capitalize on all, and that's what's maddening, is they can look so bad against K-State and Iowa State at home on homecoming and a coal rush. But now they're going to go 3,000 miles away from home, a place they've never played before, in the desert, where West Virginia has had some success over the last couple of decades. And they're going to go out there and they're going to beat Arizona on the road. So I think it's wild. But are you thinking the same way I am? Leave your comments here on YouTube. I'd love to hear how you're feeling about this game, how you're feeling against Fifita and McMillan. Are you surprised of how bad Fifita has been this year? Am I finding some numbers that really don't speak toward this narrative with Arizona? Are you nervous because of that? Do you think they're better than they really are? Or they have shown to be, what their record is, what their statistics are, at least from the scoring department? Love to know your thoughts. Like this video so more Mountaineer fans can see it. That helps out algorithm so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube. And if you like what you've heard so far, go back, check some of my other videos here on my channel, and love to have you as a subscriber. Hoping to get over 400 by the end of this regular season. So I'd love to have you as a subscriber to my channel. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and had a lot of fun doing it. And I'll be back on Sunday. Good or bad, good, bad, or indifferent, we'll be back to talk about this battle of mid between Arizona and West Virginia, and it's still going to be a lot of fun to watch on TV. So, hail West Virginia, let's go.